All right, everyone, welcome to Quick Coffee. Exciting to be here with my dear friend Pat. This is our first video Quick Coffee, so we've planned a little bit of a different setting today. But before we kick it off with our exciting topic, which is the launch of two companies, I first want to check in with you. How are you doing today, Pat?
Yeah, very good, very good. Super exciting to be recording the 20th episode of Quick
Crazy.
Coffee. I think when we had the episode three or four, someone sent me the statistic that only 5% of podcasts actually get to episode 20. So
Yeah.
it's definitely been a ride, but super exciting to be here and to have it on video. So everyone, you can check it out on Spotify. The video should be there. But super exciting, yeah, and also of course the topic of today. We've been in Berlin with the entire team.
Yeah.
We are launching Sonic today, and
Love it.
we got the whole team to Berlin.
Yeah.
We took photos. We finalized our website. It's been a sprint for the last 2 weeks, but I'm super excited to talk about it today for the first
Amazing.
time because we've been working on this for half a year.
That's-
but then it was
yeah.
always in stealth.
Right.
So it's been the same for Blossom.
It's
right?
funny because I honestly think that most people, when they think about us and also Quick Coffee, they would probably imagine that we do that full time, or definitely more than we actually talk about it. But the thing is, the reality is that, I mean, most of the time we spend on, behind the scenes building a stealth company that I'm so excited to finally be able to talk about today, right? Because, I don't know, what was it when someone was asking you, what do you do, right? What is it you would usually tell that person?
Yeah, actually, I mean, for the last half a year, I would say, it's been many different topics, and of course, I would say we are building a new company. We are not talking about it yet, but it is developing and it's going to launch at some point. We actually wanted to launch it already, I think, 2 or 3 months ago, and then it always got postponed, like that always is. But now we're finally ready
Yeah.
to launch, and it's super exciting. And of course, I mean, in the last half a year, already so many people have believed in Sonic, both from a customer side, but also from the team side. We've already grown to 11 people, so it's just crazy to see that the company's already so far, but then we are now talking about it
Yeah.
publicly for the first time. But maybe we start with Sonic and Blossom and the introduction. And where it all came from. So
Yeah,
you want to start with Blossom?
and also, right before we dive in, what the coincidence that we're also starting a company at the same time? I mean, we know each other back from the Mapify days and have definitely been working on several entrepreneurial adventures.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to see that we are now coming back, both working on something new, and can't wait to talk about it today. So let's kick it off. I mean, should we would you like to give a quick introduction about Sonic, because you already mentioned the name,
Yeah.
and then afterwards we also talk about Blossom.
Yeah, definitely. So we are launching Sonic today as a product and technology studio. Basically, what we discovered over the last half a year is that when we thought about the new company we wanted to build, we got together with the team. There's a lot of people involved, thankfully, that I've worked with before. So nearly the entire Mapify founding team, many people that we know from Gorillas or Mapify. So it's really, really cool. I mean, that's for me, the best part about it, to be able to work with people that I know so well and are friends with. And it's just, that is the most beautiful part about
It's
it.
also the most difficult one, bringing the
Yeah.
right people together. I mean, I know many people who have ideas, but then the first thing is, all right, who are the people that I'm going to execute this with? And
Yes.
I think that's where most people struggle. So I think we can both be lucky that we had the right people around us, and we're able to actually take this first step of, starting and collaborating with first clients and so on. So I think I totally agree. I think to me, team has always been important, but also the collaboration with you, to be honest. I mean, Quick Coffee is just a side project.
Yeah.
But if I think about it, it's another project that brings us closer together, which I truly like and I truly love. And I think also the reason, and that brings us a little bit back to the one episode that we've talked about, which is what it means to be a founder, and also what it means to be a founder to us. And I do agree with the fact that I think the reason I enjoy my job and my work so much is because it is a privilege to be able to surround myself with so many like-minded and passionate people that are all working on exciting things. And I mean, it's you, but it's also other friends that are all taking the risk to kind of start their own firm and companies. And it's the environment that I absolutely love, and I think it's one of the reasons I couldn't imagine to do anything else anymore in my life apart from, surrounding myself with people, starting projects or companies, and having that as a daily routine.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think, this week we'll have the celebration dinner, for the 2 launches, and we'll bring the Sonic team and the Blossom team together. And when I think about the people who will be, on that table, that is the best group of people that I could imagine working with, So the interesting thing when I look back, at the last 6 months, starting to think about the ideas for Sonic and what we could do, the most interesting part for me is that we actually, for a long time, we didn't have a clear idea what we would do, but we had a very clear idea about the company that we wanted to build and the team and the culture that we wanted to build. So, the development was actually that we said, okay, we have several people who have worked with each other before, and so now we wanna found a new company. We wanna build a fantastic team. We didn't wanna raise funding. We wanted to build a fantastic culture, and so we focused on these things first, and then we actually looked into, okay, what could we do? And so now then, of course, a couple of ideas came up. We looked into building software products, which we started, and we are still doing that inside of Sonic. We got together with companies from mainly the Berlin startup ecosystem, and either looked into the software solutions that we are building together with them, or actually started to develop and product manage products with them together. And so that's how Sonic ultimately got to where it is today already after just half a year, which is what we call, a product and technology studio that works together with startups and companies and really moves fantastic products forward. And so that's just the interesting development, that ultimately we got to what we wanted to do after having a super clear understanding of the company that we wanted to build.
Isn't that such an interesting observation as well, that it is less about the idea if you start a company and more about the people and who you're starting it with?
Yeah.
It's interesting because, at Crandom, for example, I think, there are a few examples where the idea was very still in the early days, right?
Yes.
But the team, that has been there was backable or was something that we've believed in. And I think it's also interesting when I talk to other investors that I've already had this scenario often when they told me that I don't even invest in pure ideas. Ideas are cheap, right? They come and go.
Yep.
But they invest mainly in the people and in the team and in the people who are executing it. And I think it was the same a little bit, when we actually back in the days worked at Mapify. The idea constantly changed, right? I mean, yes, we were a travel company and we were trying to, simplify the travel planning process, but also remember the time when we sold photo books.
Yeah,
right.
Everything. So many different ideas, that we had. So I think it's this realization that ultimately, what you do as a company will always be evolving, and it should. But there are some things that for me, when we thought about the process of building Sonic, we knew from the beginning, from these past experiences, that these things should not be changing.
Yeah.
And so I think that paying attention to the team that we want to build, the culture that we want to build, these are actually the 2 topics that we've worked on the most. These 2 things, they pay off so much, because ultimately when you have that's a strong belief that I have. When you have a fantastic team in place of people who are truly talented in what they do, and you bring that together with a culture that ultimately defines a fantastic workplace, then great ideas will come, sooner or later, and you will find exactly what you want to do. For us, we discovered very quickly actually in that process that working together with startups and established companies to build fantastic products together with them as partners and with a long-term relationship and supporting them in, starting and getting their vision from 0 to 1 and to 10 on the product and tech side. That was something that we were incredibly good at doing. So we quickly found that nonetheless, and we can define very well today what Sonic is doing, but maybe it's going to change again a little bit in a year. But at least we know the team that we want to build.
That's what I'm saying, right? The idea might change, and so does it as, with my company Blossom. which I will also introduce in a second. But I think what we want to also cover today is really this: what happens when you bring the right people together,
Yes.
and also how do we think about even our companies collaborating, right? Even though they're operating in different fields, how do we make sure that they collaborate, and what do we see in this collaboration? But I think before we kick off, I can
let's
also
let's talk about Blossom.
give a quick intro about Blossom. I think the idea also started. I mean, I've always been a design freelancer. I always enjoyed working with founders on early products and brands, and I think back in the days, it was just a matter of time when I wanted to take the step to really stop operating alone as an individual, and instead, and it goes also back to the people game, instead try to bring the best designers possible together to offer founders and people and companies we believe in this kind of service of UX, UI, product design. And something else that I found interesting throughout my journey, and I think that was also the reason I wanted to join a product design studio, is the idea of implementing design as an expertise as early as possible when it comes to starting a company. It's something I've observed so many times that capital has been allocated badly simply because there hasn't been a designer in-house who helped to prioritize the things that the product and engineering team should actually work on, right? And I think that was the idea of, I think it truly makes sense to partner with early stage founders and coach them and help them to think user-centric. And that's, at the end of the day, the job of a designer, right? It's obviously, people always talk about all the visuals of it and making things pretty and interactive and dynamic and modern. But at the end of the day, I think our biggest job is, understanding the customer and the user and almost playing this observative role to figure out what they want.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, the idea. And now we're a small team. We're just getting started. It's Johanna, co-founder at Blossom, and then Johan, who also joined very early on. And we're super excited for the next month and weeks. Obviously, I think it has always been a nice journey so far, since we've been working on one client already together, which I think is a nice transition to maybe also talk a little bit about how we see Blossom and Sonic collaborating going forward.
Yeah.
Be it the offsites that we're planning or the projects where,
or the office. You're already looking at the office. That's something that, I think we've been collaborating on so many different things, but one thing where I'm always inspired by you is that, you have these very big ideas very early on, where sometimes actually, we sometimes have these discussions, right? Where it's like, I am kind of more, the person looking at things and looking at the financial side or something. Of course, this time we're both bootstrapping companies, and so it's a totally different game in terms of finances. But it's more, this take on, let's do it right from the very beginning and let's have the big ideas. And so you were already looking at an office space and everything for Blossom. So it's really cool. I think that
it's not just an office. It's an artwork.
See, that's where I think like both of our teams actually inspire each other. And I want to quickly touch upon one thing that you said, which I think is so important, and that's this early design, prioritization inside a company. I think if I look back at projects that we even did together before Sonic and Blossom, the realization was every single time that when you truly understand product and engineering, you also understand that great design needs to come first, it needs to be involved in the process very early on. And I think that impact that you're having with Blossom, that's actually the biggest impact in the very beginning of a project, where you shape the priority of that company to be a design-driven and design-focused team and startup and product. And I think that for me is an incredible realization. I think that you've had, where it truly influences the whole direction. And of course, on our side, when we think about implementing something and doing product management and engineering for a digital product, we would also be looking at how can we ensure that there's really truly great design that has flown into this, right? So
something that I can tell you though is, yes, design is important, 100%. And the earlier you implement it, the better, because it will help you to better understand your user and the people and the people you're eventually building the product for. But what I can also tell you, and that's also why I'm so happy about this collaboration, the design it's only finished once it's being built, right? And so it's the engineers and the developers who are eventually, taking the designs and bringing it to the reality. And I think that's something we shouldn't underestimate, because you can have the best designs on earth, but then if you have an engineering team that is not able to execute those designs properly, then it's useless. And it's the same. It's the other way around as well, right? Yep. You could have the best engineers possible building the craziest animations, right? But if you don't have the visuals and the designs and the ideas for it, you won't end up building a great product, right? And I think that's where I see the biggest value here in, you focus on bringing together the brightest tech people that you can possibly find. I do the same for design, uniting designers, bringing them together, collaborating on projects. And I truly believe that this can be a super, a power horse, right? Building companies going forward, supporting founders, but who knows, right? In the future, if we not even start, a project ourselves and design and develop it, purely in-house.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe let's chat about one question, and that is, if you think about Blossom now, of course, it's not the first company that you're founding. What is something that you are doing differently today when you look at Blossom and really look back at the experiences that you've had before? What is something that you're doing different today in terms of, I really want to improve on that in the new company that you're building, the new team and the new vision that you have, and then we can come back to this whole idea of like what is the outlook for Sonic and Blossom? What are we planning?
Yeah, I mean, I defined myself guidelines that I'm trying to follow on a daily basis that will help me to be a better founder. And I think it starts with simple quotes like, don't work with assholes, not internally, but also not with clients. And I'm lucky to be in a position where we both really can choose who to work with. But honestly, looking back, it has been a pain. Like I've been working with people that I would never work with before, work with again. And I think that would be one of the biggest learnings, being really careful with who I want to work with and what the environment is that I wanna be working in. The second one is I'm thinking long term here. This is not a short term game. To me, Blossom, I could imagine that Blossom is the last company that I am founding here. Yes, there can be side projects, right? Take Quick Coffee, and I'm also happy to start other side initiatives. But I truly believe in Blossom in a way that I want to be together with the team building this company for the next 10 plus years, right? Berlin will just be the beginning, right? There will be an office in Berlin, but I'm already thinking Stockholm, London, New York. I'm not even joking, right? That's where people might think, it's way too early to think about these ideas.
See, that's exactly, just to give people like a little bit behind the scenes. This is like basically our every conversation that we have. Felix enters with a big picture vision, and then I'm already thinking like, okay, how are we even financing the office in Berlin? And you're already thinking about Stockholm. I think this is what makes, when we collaborate on something, this is what makes it unique, because ultimately, I think there is a great balance, and still, you're always shooting for the stars, and ultimately it's an inspiration for both of us where we reach higher things by doing that. But that is just a great example. So I love that. And truly, I mean, honestly, this whole idea of, this being the last company that, you would be working at and you would be starting, I find that a beautiful thought, because ultimately, the way that I look at things, even when I think about Sonic and the team and the culture that we're building, is that by now building a company that's not venture backed, where we are bootstrapping it, we only have basically we only need to be focusing on one major stakeholder, and that's the people that we work with. Right. And for me, it's a game changer, because the interesting thing, and that's a realization I've only now had through Sonic, is that ultimately, in most scenarios where you have venture funding, you have two stakeholders to make happy, right? You have your customers and you have your investors. And that's not something that you should be underestimating, because when I look at early stage companies that we work with from an investor perspective, for example, they are still spending a lot of time working with investors, even though, of course, ideally they would be focusing 100% on their customers, right? So that is definitely a game changer. And for me, this whole idea of, how can we build a company and a team and a culture that is so great that I would be willing to work there for the next 10, 20 years? That's now something that's driving me very much at Sonic. And it's actually taking the focus away from what we specifically do, right? So I tell it the team very often. I say, look, I don't know what specifically we'll be doing in a year or two, but I know what kind of company we want to be, right? I know what kind of team and culture we want to have. And so as long as that's steady, we can see, where things lead us.
And I think
that's the baseline.
Yeah, and I love those topics, and I think that's also the idea why we started Quick Coffee, right? To be able to cover those topics that we are both experiencing, at Sonic as well as Blossom.
All right, so I would say let's cover one more topic, and then we wrap it up for today, and that is, where is this whole thing going? If you look at Blossom, what are you planning for the short term? Of course, you're now looking at office space in Berlin. You've got the team in place. So what's short term and what's long term? Of course, Paris, London, the international.
So we're moving to Paris in about 2 weeks to open our Paris office over there. No, I mean, short-term thinking. I truly believe in. Right now, we're at a stage where there's nothing more important than working with the right people. And what I mean by that is finding the right companies to work with, right? Because I believe we have this focus of partnering with a startup at a very early point of time. What that means is that we as a design team can have a huge impact on the company. But obviously you want to spend your time and passion and love on projects that also have the potential to become a very big thing, right? And it's, I think it's important to understand that we don't work on projects for the short term. I would decline a client that says, hey, we need you for 2 weeks. That's just not how design works. It takes you, whenever we start with a new client and work on a new project, we plan at least 2 to 3 weeks to spend time with the founders, meet people in the team, meet users, customers of that company, really, observe. Obviously, right? We're not a company that says we take 3 to 4 weeks research and don't do anything but drink coffee and spend time with people. No, but I think it's important that we're creating early concepts and stuff like that as well, but we still want to intentionally take the time to, really figure out who's it we want to work with, and then also spend time in really getting warm with both the client as well as their customers. So I think that is one of the big things that I will be focusing on in the next weeks and months, deciding who to work with, right? Really figuring out who's the ideal client for Blossom. And the second thing is obviously growing the team, right? I think there's nothing more important than sourcing the right people, finding the right people to work with, and I guess that is even the more challenging one.
Definitely.
Design there's such a huge need for design, and in our visual days where there are constantly new companies starting, right? And I think that's why there's also such huge potential in working on those topics, right? Bringing the right people together, but then at the same time sourcing the right clients to work with. How's it for you? What do you think are, speaking about Sonic, the short-term next steps, and where do you see yourself, or ourselves, both of us in the next years?
Yeah, I think the most important part you already mentioned. It's really about bringing the best possible people together for our team, right? That is the core focus that I have, and I've had that for since we started, because I truly believe that the moment you get the best possible people together in product and technology, and now working with Blossom also for design, you will be creating fantastic products for and with companies. So I think that whole aspect of how do we identify and find and recruit the best possible people in engineering and in product, that's going to be a huge focus. And of course, ultimately, and I think that point is so important that you mentioned, identifying also the best possible people to work with on the side of our clients and partners and the companies that we partner up with, because I think that, you know, it really goes both ways. I think when you find companies that you can work with that truly understand the importance of product design and engineering, that's when you have the chance to build the best possible products, right? Because ultimately, you know, you don't need to just find companies that want something, you know, to be built. You need companies that fundamentally believe in this focus on product design and engineering to create excellence, because that's the focus that we have. We will only be able to deliver fantastic products if we work with companies that also want to have that inside their business, right? And so that's going to be the core focus. I don't know where we will be in 2 years, but I think that that's going to be the core focus for the next year, and I'm super excited about it. And, you know, maybe, you know, closing this out, one thing that I do want to say is, you know, there's definitely a huge thank you from my side, you know, to everyone who has already believed in Sonic, who has joined Sonic on the team side, but also who has chosen to work with, because that's the people who ultimately make that journey possible, right? And so that's definitely something I wanna mention.
And maybe that's also a good chance to thank everyone who has been listening to Quick Coffee so far and has been supporting us, you know, throughout the, you know, past month. This is our 20th episode, so super exciting. And thank you so much for listening today. We hoped you enjoyed a different format today, and we're gonna publish that on, you know, Spotify and YouTube and Netflix and other channels. Just joking. We'll see how that goes. And thank you for listening, and see you next Thursday back on Spotify. And have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Cheers.